Welcome to the Whiskey Congress. Honest, open talk dedicated to speaking the truth to those who are open to hearing it. Black, white, right, left. Most importantly, honest, bold, and fueled by good whiskey. In Whiskey Veritas, we are Whiskey Congress. Join the evolution.
Whiskey Congress is back in session. Stephen and I are together on the 4th of July.
America.
Coming to you essentially as live as we ever do. Fuck yeah. How you doing, man?
Good. Got a good workout in. Feel good. Happy Independence Day.
Thank you. Happy Independence Day to you as well.
Yeah, which, tough. We're in a tough spot as a country, We got a lot of conflict, a lot of things to be, frustrated and angry about, but still a patriot,
Sure.
I love my country, and you don't only love it when things are going good and easy. And so if you're truly a patriot, then you want to figure out a way to kind of get through all of this for the good of everyone. What's interesting is this came up on social media not that long ago, and like a lot of oddly enough progressive white liberals saying how they weren't going to celebrate the 4th of July, and they're angry at America, and screw the 4th of July, and screw Independence Day, and I just chimed in and was just like, all right, well, that's your thing, but, still going to enjoy the fireworks and the hot dogs. It's like, oh, how could you? You're betraying your blackness and everything else, and the explanation is pretty simple. And I told him to listen to the show because I was going to explain it to him.
Okay.
The reality is, since this country's inception, since the first war we fought, the Revolutionary War, like there's been a black person that's fought in every war for this country.
Right.
Right? Christopher Sadix dies, right? Basically sets off the Revolutionary War, and then on and on and on. But every war we fought, there's been someone, my skin color, maybe darker, that's fought for this country, whether by choice or not.
Okay.
And especially in our modern wars, a lot of it was by choice. And they did it knowing that, whether it's World War I or World War II, we had segregation and everything else, but they did it in the hopes that the country would get better, right? My grandfather knew he was coming home to segregation. He knew he was coming home and that the white people that he fought with were going to have access to better benefits than him, and he wasn't going to have access to certain things. But he did it because he believed that all in all, things were going to be better off for him and for his kids and me at some point. And so the country was worth fighting for. And he was right. Things are better for me than they were for him and my parents and everything else. And you can say what you want about how tough shit is now, but the bottom line is things are better in this country than they were 50 years ago. Right? Yeah, They're rough. Yeah, they're bad, and we've got some things going on. And Roe, Dobbs overturning Roe has pushed us back. But we still have tools to combat that. And it's going to be a fight, but this country has just been in a constant state of turmoil since its inception. So this is nothing new. But the bottom line is, for all Americans, like this shit is better now than it was 50 years ago. And we got a lot of homeless people, and we got people in jail, we got all sorts of problems. But I think if you could time travel,
right,
like you'd rather be poor and homeless now in the U.S. than you would be, like 50 years ago. Like 50 years ago, you didn't have a chance. And so because of that, like I refuse to give up on my patriotism just because I'm not happy with where the country is at, and I'm not gonna acknowledge. Like I refuse to not acknowledge what the progress that we have made, even in light of everything else that's happening right now. And I just think it's important to sort of keep that in perspective. Like, yes, shit is rough right now. It's. I'm not saying that it's all roses, but this idea that some fucking white liberal kid wants to sit here and tell me it's harder for you than it was, like, get the fuck out of here, son. Like, dude, I live in a house in the fucking suburbs. I work, I travel, I go wherever I want to go. But the police aren't going to do shit. The reality is the chances of me getting killed by police are slim. Are they higher for me than they are for you? Yes.
Sure.
But as long as I don't fucking do anything, chances are I'm not going to get killed by police. right? I mean, like, it's a scary thing.
You've had some incidents where you've been pulled over for stupid reasons.
Right, I have. Listen, I've had some incidents, and they've been close, right? Like, and they shouldn't have existed. But there's also, there have been times where I put myself in bad situations and everything else, but the reality is that chances are it's not going to happen, even though there's a higher probability that it could. That probability is still low, and my whole life and how I choose to live and think isn't going to be framed through this lens of what happens if I get stopped by the police. Because if you live that way, then you're a fucking prisoner, and I refuse to be a prisoner, captive, slave to anything, right? And, like, how dare you put that on me and have the audacity to tell me how I should live? Like, if that ain't the most racist shit, like, oh, you gonna sit here and tell me, a black man, how I need to, like, you can take your punk ass and get the fuck out of here, right? Like, so I just, I've had it, because there's even people who follow us on Twitter. This should offend you. Bitch, what the fuck how are you gonna tell me what needs to offend me? Like, if it offends you because you think it offends, like, you're on the wrong, like, people don't fucking think. Like, right? Like, you like, they're so self-centered and righteous about this shit, like, which that is what gets the left in trouble. That righteousness and that moral superiority, right, and that assumed intellectual superiority is what got us here, right? Like, because of the constant, well, I have the intellectual argument. Well, motherfucker, these people don't care about your intellectual argument, and now they have amassed enough stupid people to where your intellectual argument is in such the minority that it literally does us no good. So now we need something else.
Well, I don't know what we need, though, because in changing gears, what's going on with the January 6th hearings right now, we are not living in two Americas. We're living in two realities. I mean, the people who are watching this stuff, and I'm among them, are saying, holy shit, this is even way worse than I thought. I mean,
nah, see, that's where we differ.
Okay.
This is exactly what, we're going to talk about Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony, but I'll just tell you, like, everybody's like, oh my God, like, it's Donald Trump. How is any of that a fucking surprise? Him in the car, like, none of that is a surprise to me.
Ordering removal of metal detectors to allow armed people into the Capitol was beyond the pale to me.
Jim? You saw the same shit I saw.
I saw the same shit
you think that shit just happened?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I wasn't outraged before. But the idea that the President of the United States was saying, get armed people into the Capitol building because they're not there to hurt me, I thought that was cartoonish when I heard it, and it happened.
Look,
and half the country sticks their head so far up their ass to say, oh, it's just you liberals making this shit up. And part of what you're saying kind of feeds into that they've been tired of the snooty, we have to get rid of the word grandfather because the word grandfather can be racist. And, I mean, I think it was the University of Washington, had, like, students beating that drum. And as a liberal, I sat there going, "Shut the fuck up."
I think it was like Cal State Berkeley or Cal Berkeley that wanted to get rid of the term manhole cover because of the word man.
Right.
But it's shit like that where, look, you can say what you want to say and whatever, but like now, you had people tell you, like, look, this is a little too far, and the argument was, like, screw you, this is the way it needs to be, and all that screw you, we're going to do it because we feel that this is morally right or whatever, or this is the right thing based off of what our philosophy, you're getting pushback now, but the problem is, you've got you have the same number of people that are tired of the progressive left as the progressive left are tired of the conservative right, and so this is the fallout. So you have two realities, right? You've got, well, I think there's three. You've got the people watching January 6th who are amazed and blown away by everything that they're hearing, and everything is breaking news, and this is the thing that's going to take Donald Trump down. Then you've got the people who are completely ignoring it, so your Fox News crowd that are just like, it's all a shit show, it's all a sham, it's a kangaroo court, and this isn't real, and everything that Cassidy Hutchinson said is hearsay, and blah, 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 and it's all bullshit, and they don't believe any of it. And then you have the people in the middle who are just like, well, this isn't that surprising. You still don't have enough to, like, charge Donald Trump, although you're starting to get closer as we get more information about the specifics that are happening. Because what this comes down to is this January 6th commission ultimately what they're doing is they're trying to build a case to bring charges against Donald Trump, to indict him, and to basically keep him from running for office again. And I'm not opposed to that, but the DOJ has to play this very smart, and you still don't have enough. I don't care whatever news analyst, legal analyst has said that, oh, this is enough. It's not. Right? You don't have a case against him for obstruction. You don't have a case against him for... You don't have a case for incitement? You still don't have the case for it. Right? Like, I mean, so if you're gonna build a case against the president of the United States, it can't be some pussyfoot bullshit. You better have, I mean, documented video, audio, all of it. You cannot go and try to build a circumstantial case against the president. We're talking about the president of the United States. We're not talking about you or me.
Right.
We're not talking about Jim trafficking. You know what I'm saying? God rest his soul.
If it was you or me, would we be indicted by now? I would say yes.
Maybe.
Okay.
And guess what? There's two different fucking standards. There's a standard for indicting me and you, and there's a standard for indicting the president of the United States. And you can cry about fairness. You can cry about all that other shit. Wipe your fucking tears and shut the fuck up. We're not going to indict a former president, I don't care how big of a dipshit he was, on circumstantial evidence. You better have hard-nosed proof. Right? Now, here's the deal with Cassidy Hutchinson. Everyone's saying her testimony is hearsay. Stop talking. You don't know the first thing about the fucking law. Right? The rules of evidence are very, very complicated, and the hearsay itself is very, very complicated. Right? Like, so is her testimony hearsay? It depends. It depends on who is being indicted. It depends on what she is testifying for and what she is testifying to and who the target of that testimony is. There's so many different rules.
Also, this is a hearing, not a trial.
Well, it's right? What I'm saying in terms of hearsay, they said if you take this testimony and transpose it into a criminal trial against Donald Trump, you're not going to be able to use it. It's going to be inadmissible. So this isn't the smoking gun that you think it is. And my response to that is pump your brakes, because there are parts of her testimony that would be admissible. There are parts of her testimony that would not be considered hearsay under the actual rules of evidence. And so this idea that everything she said is basically useless because it's just her interpretation of what someone else told her isn't accurate. And that's more towards the conservatives who are saying, well, it doesn't matter because it's all hearsay, right? That's what was told to her. But there is a world where she could be testifying where it's not necessarily where maybe Donald Trump is on trial, but you're trying to build something else, and so that testimony isn't necessarily considered hearsay based off of how it's presented, right? But that's a complex thing. We're not going to get into the details of that. But it's just a lot more complicated than that. But all of that to say, you don't have the case you need yet from anything that I've seen to be able to indict him. And while everything that we're learning to this point, right, for me just confirms what I assumed was going on. I sent you that story months ago about that scene in the White House with Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, Mike Flynn,
the near fist fight,
right? Where the guy basically tells Mike Flynn, like, if you want to challenge me, let's fight. Otherwise, sit down.
Yes,
right. Like, I mean, so knowing that sort of background, like, see, that's the thing. I keep that filed away, so when I hear this stuff, I'm like, this all makes sense. Like,
okay, I mean, just again, to me, the next level was remove the metal detectors. Those people aren't going to hurt me. That's third world Panama dictator shit. And it happened here. And the fact that there are not people, and the few people that are standing up to him, Kinzinger and Cheney being the main examples, are getting just dragged in what used to be their circles. I don't think Kinzinger's even running again. I think he said, fuck this, I'm done. Yeah. And Cheney's saying, I'm not punting. And did you watch any of the primary debate with Liz Cheney? Adam Kinzinger referred to her opponents as armpit farters.
Wait, what?
He refers to armpit farters. There's just a bunch of dopes up there saying stupid shit. He said they must be sticking their hand in their armpit and making fart sounds.
I'm confused.
Adam Kinzinger called the people debating Liz Cheney armpit farters.
Oh, okay.
Because they were literally... They sounded like Alec Baldwin in Team America after everything's coming unglued, and they're just saying words. Socialism, corporate America. But I respect her for digging in and saying, fuck you, vote me out. And if she does get voted out, that says to me, we're as bad as I'm afraid we are.
Right. I mean, and it's kind of, and that's where I'm kind of a little bit frustrated with Adam Kinzinger if he's not running again, because it's just like, again, that it's, and I get where he's coming from. It's just like, look, it's not, screw these people, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and he's probably in a district that, you know, they've basically turned on him because he has turned on them, I guess, in their eyes. So, you know, he recognizes that the writing is on the wall.
I was working in his district last year.
Yeah.
They're nuts.
Yeah. I mean, so I get it. And I also respect Liz Cheney and them, Kinzinger both. And the only thing that you could hope is that you're dealing with a bunch of spineless people, Congress, Senate, Democrat, Republican, whatever. Like, they're all like just out for their best interest, right?
Sure.
So you hope that maybe, while they're not bold enough to come out and say anything publicly, then maybe that some of this is coming out and it's shifting, and they'll move away from the rhetoric. But I don't believe that they will, because you've got some people who have a history of, like, who historically have been, you know, stable, sane, moderate people, right? Elise Stefanik out of New Jersey is one, right? Like, she was Republican, but she was a moderate and, you know, was concerned about climate change and, you know, wanted equal rights for LGBTQ and all that other stuff. That's how she won. But then she started to get herself sucked into the Trump train because she was losing ground as a moderate, and, you know, like, Trump kind of sinks it, like, realizes she's losing ground and she's starting to flail and she gets a little bit desperate. So, you know, Trump has a rally and invites her to it. And, you know, this is firsthand from someone in her campaign. Once she saw the magnetism of Donald Trump and the support that he got and how excited everybody was around it, she was sold. And she's never looked back. And people who in her campaign who have questioned her, when who have said, like, hey, like, this doesn't track. Like, this isn't you. This isn't what we said. We built our campaign on being, you know, doing what was right for the people and bringing some sanity back, whatever. Those people were literally summarily fired. Get out.
Okay. I mean,
you know, so, and so all of that to say is, I think that we're at a point where we're like, Cheney and Kinzinger on the GOP side are a dying breed. There aren't many of them left. And that party is becoming, it's no longer the party of extremes. This is just who they are, right? And that's what you're up against. And so it's not about anything other than creating this culture war that doesn't need to be substantiated by good policy, or facts,
or you can make shit up and just run with it.
Intelligent thought. Like, their whole idea is to make it this culture war where you can use just whatever whatever buzzwords for the day to continue to get support from the base to stay in power, and the only way to shift away from that is that they have to shift away from that. Right? Like, there's nothing you could do to make them, and if that's the way they continue to operate, then it's ultimately probably going to just rip this country in half. Like, you can see the fissures already.
Yeah, and the overturning of Roe v. Wade is really opening that wound. And I mean, I was having lunch downtown Lakewood the other day, and a protest went through, and then people at the bar started talking. Now, I was in Lakewood, Ohio, which is with a fairly young audience. Some of them didn't even fucking know what Roe v. Wade meant. There was like a 22-year-old girl who literally said, "So the abortion's illegal now?" I'm like, "Not exactly. The federally, it is no longer a protected right, but now states decide things." The fact that kids don't know that, this is a girl who's talking about, you know, not wanting to have kids. I'm like, you should be paying attention to this shit. You should have voted last election. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. But now it is an open wound, and I'm going to be curious to see.
But here's the thing, so that's that. The problem is that that's who you need to vote to shift a lot of this stuff back, and they're not doing it. And
a decision like this could change that.
So you think that little conversation you had with that little girl changed her mind?
No,
and now
no,
she's
no,
going to
no,
go
no,
out
no,
and
no,
vote.
no. I don't think I changed anyone's
learn
mind.
about the
No,
issues.
no,
Like,
no. I don't.
But that's the thing. Like, you would have to have a very good conversation with her on a very consistent basis to get her to shift into the idea that she needs to vote, and you need to do that about 20 million times.
One down.
Okay.
But I seriously think this is going to be really interesting when governorships are governors' races are decided, because that's going to be a huge issue on every state's campaign, right? Every state is going to have a candidate for governor that says, I am, not going to tamper with state laws. I'm going to allow women's choice. And it's a complicated issue. We talked about that through last week, and
I think this is what I'll say. I think it will be very interesting, but I can't make a prediction. I agree. I don't have confidence in, I know
a lot of pro-choice Republicans.
Yeah, I don't have confidence in them that this is going to shift them to vote for. You do, but your judgment on this, I think, is just flawed, right?
Fine.
There's also nothing to support your stance.
Well, first of all, I didn't think a stance. I said it's going to be interesting to see how this impacts.
No. Earlier, before, you said that you think that this is going to shift them to vote, to vote in the interest of, abortion rights and access.
Okay.
I don't think that. I think that they may have those feelings and they may be very strong, but I don't know if it's strong enough to get them to vote Democrat or for a progressive candidate at this point. I don't.
You know what? It can be, but just like in 2020, it might be enough for them to not vote for who they would have otherwise voted for.
Now, there's also a difference. Now, I think you were saying that in reference to a presidential election. I think governorships is a little bit different.
I was saying governorships.
No, we were originally talking about the president in 2024. Stop. So,
I don't think I said that, but
you did.
Okay, whatever.
On the show. Fucking pull it up.
Fine, go on.
Don't get mad at me because you can't remember what the fuck you said. It's what you said.
Who's yelling at who here?
I am yelling at you because you're being fucking ridiculous. It's the point that you made. All I'm saying is that point was wrong, and I'm trying to give you credit and say that this point may have more validity to it because it may shift them on a governorship. I don't think it shifts them on a presidential election. That's the point that I'm trying to make, right? I'm not saying that you did. All I'm saying is what you said, right? We were talking about presidential elections. We were talking about 2024. You said that you thought that the Roe versus Wade decision would shift, GOP women who are about who were pro-choice.
Okay, I don't believe I said presidential. That was not what I was trying to say.
Jesus Christ.
Well, it's on.
Move on.
What would you like to talk about next, Steve?
The next thing on the damn thing. What the fuck? Come on. It's right there.
Okay. Having a great show today. So with the other Supreme Court, whatever. The other Supreme Court decision that came out was the EPA ruling, which I don't know much about other than to say it was a case based in West Virginia, and it really gutted the EPA's ability to do what the EPA is supposed to do.
It guts the EPA, and it worries me because I think it guts other federal agencies. Now, the main focus is going to be environmental. Obviously, because it's dealing with the EPA, but there are other federal agencies that have an impact, right? So the SEC, when they're looking at certain things that they can ask for, how will this impact the environment, right? So what the Supreme Court came out and said was that federal agencies, they can't, so Congress gives a federal agency a certain authority. And so what the Supreme Court basically came out and said was that these federal agencies can't use the authority that Congress gave them to make new rules that aren't basically expressly stated in the authority granted by Congress, right? So this goes back to an Obama-era rule that was made that said that the EPA needed to govern emissions, right?
Right.
And so greenhouse gas emissions and everything else, which they feel is what's the driver behind climate change, right? So the Supreme Court comes back and says, all right, so the EPA then makes a rule based off of that charge and says, all right, because of that rule, we're going to require you to have X. So then the Supreme Court is basically coming out and saying that, you can't do that because what they said was you need to deal with greenhouse gases, but you have made this very specific thing that's not in what Congress said, so you can't you can't make it a requirement that they have that X because that's not what Congress charged you to do, right? So they're basically saying that you can't take this broad rule and then make these very specific requirements based off of this. Like, you need Congress to then come back and then make that the thing that you want, you need Congress to basically authorize before you can make that, a requirement or a mandate. And what this does is it basically pushes back and says, like, all right, if you want to control greenhouse gases, then Congress, you're going to have to pass the very specifics that you want that specific federal agency to do. Right, like, so they can't say, all right, EPA, your deal is the environment. Do what you got to do to help the environment, right? Which is essentially what the charge has been. Now it's, all right, Congress, if you want them to require a certain type of air purifier or carbon emission reducer or whatever, then you need to specifically state that in whatever bill that you pass granting authorization for this. Now, a lot of people look at that and say, all right, well, Congress just do it. Okay, well,
Congress is really good at getting stuff done.
Like, all right, when's the last time Congress has done anything worthwhile? Right? Like, I mean, they can pass something to get a statue built, but beyond that, like, actual laws that are helping and impacting people, like, we can't get it done. So,
especially politically divisive issues, like
right.
environmental stuff.
Right.
The right is just going to cling to, nope, you libtards are trying to ruin the economy, and the economy is more important, blah, blah,
right.
blah.
I mean, it's very specific. So what the Supreme Court said was you can't adopt rules that are transformational to the economy unless Congress has specifically authorized you to do so. Right? And that phrase is what scares me. All right? Think about what they just said. You can't adopt rules that are transformational to the economy unless Congress has specifically authorized you to do so. Right? Like, so I just, like, what does that mean?
I'm trying to translate that into my professional world because I deal with FDA-regulated stuff all the time.
Well, the FDA came up in this, too.
Oh, I did not know this.
Yeah.
So what did they say about the FDA?
Same thing.
So literally, I mean, from my perspective, well, first of all, I'd be out of a job because we wouldn't need to respond to FDA findings if the FDA wasn't allowed to find anything. But realistically, I've had my disagreements with the FDA many times, and I've got all kinds of negative things to say about them. However, without regulatory agencies, businesses would put profits over everything else, and a lot of the things that made the FDA come into a necessity is because the snake oil salesmen of the Old West and making label claims and doing whatever, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff, and I won't bore you with the history. But if you take away the requirements to do things by industry and government-driven standards, this becomes a real scary world. And when you can do that to the environment, I mean, it's pretty easy to say when you're making a tablet, you have to prove it has efficacy and safety and all that. That's pretty well established in the industry, and you might not be able to. You wouldn't see the FDA roll over and say we're not going to do that anymore.
Yeah.
But if the EPA can't tell West Virginia's coal mines, you can't just pump tons of sulfur and carbon into the air willy-nilly because it happens to be a rock that burns in the ground that you stand on.
Right. I mean, because it's literally like you can't retrofit an old statute to create new tools or new mechanisms to address a problem within the agency's jurisdiction. Like, which makes so it's in your jurisdiction to control whatever this is, environment, food, drug, whatever. But you can't go around making new tools to deal with the problems as they arise, even though they're new problems, without congressional approval, which just seems like if Congress worked the way it should, this shouldn't be a problem. So on the one hand, you could say, look, the Supreme Court's not wrong. We should have more control over these agencies. They shouldn't just be able to act without some sort of oversight. But at the same time, there's the fact that we know how Congress operates, and even if Congress operated the way that it should, like the ability to be able to gather Congress together, put together a rule or some sort of charge, and then to pass that on to the agency, like it seems unnecessary, right? Like we should give the agency the authority to be able to adapt, right, as situations adapt, right, and then say, okay, based off new information and new data, we need to change how we regulate, and this is how we do it, as opposed to now you have to what they're saying is you need to go to Congress, tell Congress what the problem is, give them a solution, let Congress sort of figure it out, and then Congress will work with the solution of what they feel is best, right? Which is a bunch of people who are not experts in this whatsoever, and they're probably going to end up coming back to you anyway. Or
Marjorie Taylor Greene is in Congress.
Exactly, right? I mean, Matt Gaetz is in Congress. I mean, like, we have people who
and we're driving more towards dumb.
Right, exactly. Like, so you have more and more of these types of people going into Congress, so they're going to be the ones who are going to be making these decisions, and that's assuming that they'll even make the decision, right? Because those Marjorie Taylor Greenes and the Matt Gaetz, something comes from the EPA, they're literally going to table it. They're like, fuck it, we're not doing that, we're not giving you that authority, which some people say yay. But I mean, you say yay now until
your groundwater is poisoned, and
right, until rainwater is burning your skin off, and you're like, oh, we should do something about this. And the EPA, whatever is left of it, is going to be saying, fuck you, we told you,
right?
Or if it's the FDA or the SEC or whoever, and so you just, it feels like, and the other thing that comes out of this, the Supreme Court has basically created a new doctrine called the Major Questions Doctrine. Now, if you want my legal analysis as what the major questions doctrine is, I can't give it to you because they literally just made it up in the last few years, right? Like, they just kind of pull it out, and it's just like, okay, like with some of the various other doctrines that are used, like it's a way that they put analysis on cases in various situations that allow them to come to a consistent conclusion with a certain type of fact pattern. So they've created this new doctrine, which I don't necessarily have an issue with them doing that because, at some point anything has to be new, but they haven't done a good job of explaining like what the analysis is or how it's used. It's literally just called the Major Questions Doctrines, and then they slide it in, and then but it applies to all sorts of different
which
fact
ironically
patterns.
Brings up a bunch of major questions.
Right, exactly. That's exactly it. So it's just like, what the fuck is this? So the Supreme Court is in a weird place right now. But it's the same court that, all right, so they overturn Roe v. Wade. They punt the EPA basically out of their authority realm, right? But then this same court, who you would think with immigration would say, all right, whatever Trump did is cool, they're actually saying, no, it's not, right? Like, so Trump had an order that if, you get somebody coming in from Mexico and they are seeking asylum or whatever, that you have to release them back into Mexico. And then once the decision is made, then if it's ruled in their favor, then they can come to the U.S., right? So it's basically like, if we catch you, whether you're seeking asylum or not, you're going back to Mexico no matter what. Even if you're not from Mexico and maybe you're from El Salvador, we don't care, you're going back to Mexico. So Biden got rid of that, or wants to get rid of that executive order, and he got sued by conservative groups, and the Supreme Court came in and said, yeah, it's an executive order. Like, there's no authority to keep it in place. There's a new president who's basically going another direction, so we're not going to stop that, which a lot of people were surprised that, because that's somewhat inconsistent, right? I mean, like, because it's not precedent. You know what I mean? Like,
sure. But people tend to say a conservative judge is going to vote or issue rulings on behalf of the president that appointed them. And that's usually not the case. Usually these folks are smart and they,
Look, I agree with that, and I'm the first to point that out, right? Like, sure. I mean, like, Roberts has made plenty of decisions that you're just like, you would think that he would go the other way on it. But with the way some of these decisions have come out, like this term specifically.
Yeah.
Right, I'm not I'm not saying
Roe. It feels like there was a lot of personal.
Right,
I mean, every one of them said this is settled law when they were being nominated, and all of them flipped.
Right. I mean, like, just so that, and then this EPA case have really kind of shaken me a little bit in terms of how they're applying analysis compared to how they've done it historically. Right. Like, I've got hundreds of years of how the court has decided cases and how they've looked back at cases, and even when they made bad decisions in like Dred Scott or whatever, like how they were able to sort of, as a court, evolve based off of that. So you assume that evolution continues, and when you just see it stop dead in its tracks on multiple cases in the same term, all of a sudden you feel that there's a shift in the way the court is doing things, and now you have to basically throw out everything that you know, and so now everything is basically a surprise, right? Because you're just like, I don't know what's coming, and like, oh, this is a shock. So them coming out after Roe and West Virginia and then saying, oh yeah, the whole immigration thing, we totally agree with the Biden administration on it. You're just like, okay, well that seems sane. All right, so maybe there's a little something there left, but now, like, there's a lot less predictability in terms of how the court is going to go, right? Like, when I look at something, I could say you've got, this might be an even split, and Roberts is going to be the one who shifts the court one way or another, or maybe it's going to be Breyer or whatever. Now, I don't know, right? Like, we've got a new member to the court, Ketanji Brown Jackson, which is something that really we have to acknowledge as again historical progress, right? You've got a black woman. We've never had a black woman on the court before. That's a major thing, and a lot of people are like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Like, it's a huge fucking deal, right? Like, if you consider the percentage of people and everything else, to have the actual black woman on the Supreme Court after a few hundred years of Supreme Court, or 100 plus years of Supreme Court justices. And now you've got a black woman. Again, that's another signal of progress.
Right. And it's also causing the people who hate that progress to
lose their shit. Which again is a good sign of progress. Which is a good sign of progress, right? If it pisses people off, that means you're doing something right. So that's just. I mean, the Supreme Court is again just in a weird place right now. Paying close attention to everything that's coming out, and trying to piece together something sensible. And I think what's really going to happen, you've got Roe and Dobbs, which have basically flipped. And so I think moving forward, the court's going to go back to how they normally operate, right? I think that predictability will come back, right? I think that the main charge was, flipping abortion. Right? Like, yeah, we know what Kavanaugh said. You know what Gorsuch said. You know what Barrett said. For Joe Manchin to come out and say, oh, I'm utterly surprised. They told me that.
Fuck you, Joe Manchin.
They told me that it was settled law. This is shocking to me. Get the fuck out of here. You knew, everybody who's saying that, it's just such a dog and pony show. You knew these people were full of shit. You probably didn't even really get the fuck out of here. But, I think that was the mission. They accomplished the mission, and now they're going to go back to ruling, somewhat consistently again. And then you're going to have Clarence Thomas, who's just going to be anti-progressive, no matter what, because he flats out hate progressives and liberals and everything that they stand for. So I think he is willing to sabotage his credibility from a legal analysis standpoint to sabotage the progressive liberal agenda as he sees it. Not that some of these things are that progressive or that liberal. They're just sort of seem like it's a basic understanding. But you're never going to see him surprise you on something going forward that works out in the favor for progressives. I just think he's just dug in.
Yeah, and he's not going anywhere. It's not like he's changing jobs.
No, he's not. He's not quitting. He's not going to retire. There's a quote from one of his clerks the quote is old. It's from the late 90s, early 2000s, where he said, look, I want to serve for 43 years, right? Because I think at the time he may have been 43 years old, and he's just like, progressive liberals have given me hell for 43 years, so I want to give them 43 years of hell on the court, right? So I think 43 years for him is maybe 2034-ish.
Okay.
Or something like that. Or something along those lines. So that might be right, because he came on the court 91,
somewhere around there. I would say early 90s.
Right, that makes sense. 1934 or 2034 would be 43 years, right?
I think.
Yeah, because it's.
Yes, you're right.
Right, because it's 22. I'll be 42 and 22.
I was told there would be no math.
Right. Well, shit. You're an engineer.
I know.
I avoided math like the plague. And now all I deal with is fucking numbers. So see how that worked out. But so that's where I am with the Supreme Court. And I think people are worried about them completely trying to take over the government and everything else. I don't think that's the case. I think they wanted to flip Roe. I think they wanted to say fuck the environment, and now they're good, and so they'll get back to their normal scheduled consistency.
Whether or not gay people get to have birthday cakes made for them is.
Well, yeah. Now, again, that's Clarence Thomas made that statement, and so the real question goes back to the states. If the states take the Dobbs decision and start to apply it to other privacy type concerns around gay marriage. Clarence Thomas even said that we should look at overturn gay sex and birth control and everything. If you start to have that war, then now that's a whole different cup of tea, right? Like,
Sure.
if we have to start to relitigate the idea of gay marriage being acceptable, on state level, or if we have to go through and we have to actually codify, the right to gay marriage, and we have to codify. One of the decisions he had in there, and I forget which one, it's a Texas case, the Texas sodomy case, right? That wasn't even about marriage. That was just like, all right, can two people of the same sex have sex? Like, they should have a right to privacy in their bedroom, right? And so that Texas decision, God, I can't remember the name of that case. That decision basically said, okay, that's an allowed, whatever you do in your bedroom with whoever, like, we can't go out. Okay, but again, under that same sort of right to privacy, but that's not like, you don't have a expressly written right to same sex in the Constitution, right? The forefathers weren't necessarily thinking about, although some say,
right.
but some say, but since that's not expressly codified in the Constitution, and Roe wasn't expressly codified, so now are those things at risk? And on state levels, and listen, with some of these states, especially in the South, there is serious concern that you get the right governor in there, you get the right numbers, that they may attack it. You got Lauren Boebert down in Colorado saying that, we need to have a religious takeover of that the government should be, that church, that the separation of church and state is just not in the Constitution, and it was just something written in a letter that shouldn't really apply, and that the church should run the state, and that we need a Christian version of the Taliban in the U.S. Like a lot of crazy shit. So
Kinzinger called it that, a Christian Taliban.
Right. I mean, and
that's what they're going for.
Right. And like, those are things to keep your eye out of. I mean, like, and listen, like, if you said that 5 years ago, I think even myself would say, all right, just calm down. Now we're really seeing it. And we also need a lot of people who, like, a lot of the I told you so people, okay, you were right. But you sitting there saying I told you so doesn't fucking help. Like, we're in the fight now. So now you got to fight. Right?
Well, I mean, I truly believed that the Republican Party did not want Roe to be overturned because it was a weapon that they could use all the time. Now it's gone.
Well, but now they have the cachet to say, "Look, we did it."
Okay, true. They've got that.
But
there's a lot of people who
vote.
I think there's a lot of people who voted Republican thinking, "I'm actually pro-choice, but I like lower taxes, and Republicans will give me lower taxes," which they don't. But whatever. They were felt safe in that case.
Well,
and now they don't.
No. I think who felt safe?
I think pro-choice Republicans, of whom there are a lot.
They're still safe. They're still safe. Why? Because, I mean, you still have the threat of this being codified in states. You still have the threat of it being codified with Congress, right? Like, so there's
if you've got money, it doesn't affect you nearly as much as...
True, but I mean, like, look, there's still a fight to be had because, look, let's just say, and this isn't going to happen, but let's just say Democrats were to flip the Senate in 2022, or not flip it, but gain more ground, right? Because right now it's essentially a tie.
Yep.
So let's say they pick up 4 or 5 seats in 2022, right? And then they actually, for once, keep the momentum going. And then in 2024, they pick up 5 or 6 more seats, right? In Congress, they're able to keep the gap that they have there, right? And then somehow, miraculously, Biden stays president, right? And then they actually have, a super majority where they've got 60 plus members in the Senate, right? And then they've got, a majority in Congress, and then they've got Biden. Now you don't have to worry about the filibuster, and then theoretically you could codify all the shit, right? And then so Republicans still have plenty of reason to say, look, you still need to support us. Like, yeah, we got it done with the Supreme Court, but that's not the end of it. Oh, and by the way, you need to make sure that you're voting in local elections because the Democrats are going to push to make this stuff legal because we don't have control over the states, right?
But I guess maybe I said it wrong, but I'm saying that the people who don't want these additional chipping away at reproductive rights and at sexual rights and whatever, who would typically vote Republican, are going to say, oh, the shit that I didn't think had a chance of getting overturned already did, and I'm not trusting them anymore. And I'm talking about the state and local levels now.
I'm confused. I don't know who you're talking about. Like, I don't understand what you're saying.
I'm talking about the Republican voting college girl.
Okay, so you got a Republican voting college girl. She sees Roe versus Wade overturned.
She's pro-choice because she's a 20-something girl and she wants to have sex and wants to.
Okay, so
now when a governor is running, when someone's running for governor, is she going to flip and say, I was normally going to vote Republican, but I'm not doing that anymore because the things I thought were safe for me, meaning reproductive rights, suddenly aren't?
Okay, I see what you're saying. Maybe, but I don't think you have so because of the history of that voting block. I don't think that you can put a lot of faith in that you'll get enough. I think there may be some of that, but will it be enough to shift voting for Republicans? I don't know. And away from right. And I really think that you've got so many people that are buying into what the GOP is becoming. This culture war based group that isn't doing anything from a policy standpoint, that is really just focused on, make America great again by getting rid of the progressive liberals and getting rid of the Democrats. That's their party stance now, and there are just so many people that are attracted to that, right? Like there's a lot, you know what I mean? Like you've lost, the Democrats have lost most labor unions except for like teachers and social workers, so you've got labor unions that are beaten down, and then the labor unions that are left besides, like the teachers, like the police unions are voting Republican. All the construction unions, those are voting, GOP and Republican. You've got this, that whole block of, middle America, middle class, mostly white, like that block is really into this, hey, burn the libs. Right, and they are very loud, and there's a lot of them. Mm-hmm. Like that's the thing, like that where, you talk about a loud minority. Well, there's a pretty decent there's a decent volume to a very large group of people in the middle that are more right and that are more into where the GOP is going now. Then I think that you have new people jumping to the left.
We'll see. I know what you're saying. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying you're right. I want
to be wrong.
Understood.
I hope that I'm wrong. The problem is just that it seems like everything is going to the fact that I'm probably right, and that's not good.
No, that's not good. And I do think you're wrong. Maybe not wrong. I mean, this is there's a lot of gray in here. I'm seeing a lot more Republicans who are. I had a guy the other day refer to himself as a rhino. And he was basically saying the party has abandoned me. Like the stuff I believed in is no longer what the party represents, and it is this culture war, nonsense that has become the hallmark of that party. And I think this may be way overly optimistic, but I think there is a bridge too far, and Roe I think could be one of the first planks on that bridge. Where people
if you want to say that's one of I think you're right in terms of. First plank on the bridge to, getting people to jump off. I think Roe is the first step. If they go down this road of, gay marriage, stuff like that, because you got,
Christian authoritarianism.
Right. Because you got plenty of gay people that are conservative, right, that are GOP, that are, kind of holding their nose and dealing with this, even with some of the shit that they have to deal with. But I think you start to assault gay rights and stuff like that, then I think you'll see a little bit more of a shift. And then, you've got grumblings of some people bringing up various, race things and everything else. And I think you can get to a point where you can realize holy shit, these people are completely fucking crazy and everybody turns on them. But just the question is, how far down that road do you let them get, and how much shit do we have to unfuck, before we get there? And what does that look like? And can you get this thing back on track? Going the right direction, whatever that means or looks like, without an actual, warlike altercation? Can you get it back without, high levels of violence, without high levels of casualties, without war?
I don't know.
I just don't know. And as we continue to go further down the road, that's the concern.
Yeah. Oh,
right?
It's a huge concern.
Which is crazy that we're here now and thinking about where we were 10 years ago. I think no one thought that was a real possibility. And now every year since then, you know, it's becoming more and more realistic to now where you've got a lot of people like, you know, I mean, now you have people openly talking about, you know, talking to their neighbors like, you better choose sides. You better choose sides. Like hearing that more and more, and you're like, Jesus Christ, you know. I mean, it's just like, which again, you know, like I'm getting to a point where
you just blasphemed. You can go to jail for that if things keep going this way.
Right. I mean, and look, I mean, you know, kind of just seeping into that gun argument, like, I mean, the whole gun control thing might be an afterthought before it's all said and done. You know what I mean? Like, if you got a country at war, is anybody paying attention to gun control laws? You know, like, even your biggest gun control advocates, when fucking bullets are flying by your head, right?
Yeah. No,
you know, I mean, and all you got is it, right? Then all of a sudden, all that shit, all that worried about capacity and magazine capacity and all that shit goes out the window.
I have a few friends who would argue anti-gun stances with me, knowing that I'm a liberal who's a gun rights advocate. You know, we've done this a million times, but they've subsequently come to me and said, "Okay, I'm buying a gun. What do you recommend?" And that's happened on a handful of occasions because they're like, "You know, I know this stuff. I don't want to go to my right-wing friends and have to hear all the 'I told you so's' and all the, you know, whatever. But I want to know what's a smart thing to buy." Mm-hmm. That's happened a couple times, and I'm not offering to be that advisor. People are just randomly coming to me. All right, so we live about an hour from Akron, Ohio.
45 minutes.
45 minutes. Depends who's driving.
30 if I'm driving.
Right. Anyway, there was a fatal shooting of a young man named Jayland Walker in Akron this week. He's 25 years old, black man. Was he driving for DoorDash or?
I don't know.
Okay,
they said he's everyone's saying he's a DoorDash driver. I mean, if he was driving for DoorDash, I have some questions.
Okay.
I mean, he was armed and had a ski mask. So
okay, I didn't know about the ski mask. I knew there was a gun in the car.
When he got out, well, so let's explain what happened. So we don't know what led to the traffic stop, right? Like they said there was a traffic violation. He proceeded to lead the police on a chase for an extended period of time, and during the chase, I've seen a couple different videos where it looks pretty clear that he fired a shot at the police out of his car. His car eventually comes to a stop. He escapes out of the passenger side. When he gets out of the passenger side, he has a ski mask on. Again, I actually saw the shot. I saw him exit the vehicle with the ski mask on. He runs, and it looks like the video is dark, but it looks like he goes to turn around. And when he does, there are about 8 or 9 police officers there that unload a hail of fire on him. And they're estimating about 90 shots were fired. They're estimating that roughly 60 shots hit his body. And he was dead on the scene. Now there's questions of whether they tried to administer, life-saving, medical treatment after, which he was shot 60 times. They said a lot of the shots were to the face and to the torso. So whatever, I doubt that they did. I'm not sure why they even would, and it's kind of an insult to, death for them to say that they tried to administer medical treatment. Like, you just shot a guy 100 times. Like, like good, bad, or other. Like, what, like, come on. But they still managed to, handcuff his body, right, with 60 bullets in it. And a lot of people are taking, they're looking at those things. Look, shooting someone that many times is excessive.
Yeah, when there were 8 officers firing shots.
Right, 8 officers firing shots. So you got about, on average, 9, 10, 11 shots from each officer. Now, the issue that I have here is looking at it as a whole. Right? Like, I saw a video, him driving down. It's a muzzle flash, coming out of the driver's side. He gets out of the car wearing a ski mask. He turns. Like, once you shoot at cops, I'm sorry. Like, now, look, the argument is, well, they take white guys in. Oh, yeah, okay. That's true. They do. And
they apparently tried to use tasers on him
They tried to use tasers. It didn't. Maybe they missed or whatever, and I'm not sure that really helps or hurts anything. The reality is, like, yes, they went overboard. We got to talk about the excessiveness, and is there a better way for them to deal with the situation? Because everyone's saying he's unarmed, but I'm like, look, once he fired the shot out of the car...
It's reasonable
and
for them
he
to
gets
assume.
out of the car. I'm sorry, it's reasonable for them to assume that he's still armed, that he's willing to use that weapon against them. And as much as I hate to see that this shit happened the way that it did, like, it's hard. It's hard. You shot at the cop, right? And you can say, well, you can bring the examples of the white guys who shot at cops who didn't make it. Did those situations happen in Akron? Were these the same police officers?
Right.
Right? Like this moment in time, at night, you've got a guy who already shot at you. You've got a guy who took you on a chase. He stops his car. He gets out. He's wearing a ski mask. He turns around. So now I'm supposed to assume that he's unarmed. Like, we got, like, there's
While running at night.
While running at night, I don't know if I can buy this idea that the police are wrong here. If you want to say it was too many shots, it was excessive, okay, right? But I mean, it's like, listen, even if it's one cop that shoots at him and that one cop fires a bullet that goes center mass through his head, he's still dead.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just like, well, they killed him. Like, you can only kill somebody once. All right, so only one of those bullets are ultimately the one that killed him, right? And so it's no different whether it was one or whatever. If you want to say, all right, if you didn't have as many cops shooting it, now I guess so. Hold on, let me back up. If you don't have so many cops shooting so excessively, and there's maybe fewer cops shooting and fewer shots fired, maybe he's shot and he's still alive, and okay, right?
And he's charged with attempted murder.
He's charged with attempted murder, and okay, so that's probably a legitimate argument, right? But he still puts himself in this position. And so I refuse to not acknowledge his role in this. He made multiple terrible choices. And the worst of the worst is the one where he decides to shoot at the cops as he's running away from them. Right? You shoot at police as you're running away from them. From my perspective, You don't get much of a defense from me on that. I'm sorry. It is ugly. The way they killed him in the end is brutal, and I take some issue with it. But at the same time, you avoid all this by not shooting at the police. And listen, and the other thing too is there's a lot of things he did there where you could, like, running from the police should not be something that gets you executed by police.
Right.
Right. You know, wearing a ski mask isn't something that should get you killed by the police. Right. You know, taking somebody's DoorDash order is, right. I mean, if there was a DoorDash order in the back of the car that didn't get delivered, none of that should be punishable by death. Things get hazy once you start shooting at the police.
It's going to be really ugly locally because they already canceled their 4th of July.
Yeah, they canceled the fireworks. That was smart.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because
and here's the other thing, too. This is Akron. This is Northeast Ohio. I know this place. And the reality is that they keep that fireworks show. Something's going to happen, but it's not going to be justice for Jayland, right? It's going to be somebody taking advantage of the tension, knowing that someone that they don't like is around, and they're going to actually escalate the situation to make it worse just because they know where everybody is, right? Chaos.
And you're going to put police in position. There's going to be a confrontation, you know, because fireworks are not legal. People throwing off fireworks is not legal. It was definitely the right thing to do. But it's going to be ugly because, as you just stated, this is not Laquan McDonald. This is not the guy in Arizona that gets shot in the hotel room. I mean, those were just plain wrong. And I had no trouble saying that officer deserves to be treated like a murderer because he is.
Yes.
In this case, I can't do that. In this case, I can't do that.
No, I can't. I can't. I'm sorry. I feel terrible for his family and for the people. You know, again, I think the police were excessive, but I can't see how. I think that this, if these guys get charged, with murder, I can't see that happening. I think that taking this objectively, taking race out of it, once you've got a guy evading police, high-speed chase on the highway, shooting at police, gets out of a car with a ski mask at night, runs, turns, they shoot. I mean, I don't see how these guys are on administrative leave right now. I think they end up getting reinstated, and I mean, the black community is upset. Look, because this happens a lot, but again, at some point in time, you have these young men have to understand you have to live to fight another day. Don't give me this shit. Well, listen, learn something from Jayland Walker, because if there's another Jayland Walker scenario, like you're I forget what I was going to say, or some cliche, but
okay.
self-fulfilling prophecy.
Okay.
Right? Like you can't say, I'm afraid the police are going to kill me, so I'm going to do all these things that trigger police to kill people, and then end up surprised that you end up dead.
Right.
Right? Like you can't, like, listen, traffic infraction, like, so the problem was, right? Like, now he had never been arrested and he didn't have warrants. So did not, right? Like, as I believe I've read, and I don't know if that's 100% accurate or not, but I believe I read that he had not been arrested and he didn't have warrants. Right? Now, Ohio, especially now, open carry state, right, is actually a concealed carry state. You can carry concealed without a weapon right now today.
Without a permit.
Or without a permit. Sorry, you can't carry a weapon without a weapon, but you can carry concealed today without a permit, without a CCW, without going through training, without anything. Maybe not smart, but you can. Right? So now my issue is, if the kid doesn't have a history of arrest, and if he doesn't have warrants, he's carrying a weapon, then and you get pulled over, just get pulled over.
Right. Right. There won't be a weapons charge.
Right. There's not going to be a weapons charge. They didn't find drugs in the car, so I'm not 100% sure why he fucking ran. Right.
Obviously, I'm not either.
You know, I mean, now if there's more information out there that maybe I'm just not privy to, that would maybe explain why he ran. Okay, but like I don't, you know. Now the thing with I don't understand. Now the other thing too that I've got a lot of questions about, which is it a crime to wear a ski mask? No, but it's been hot as hell here in Cleveland. The last, couple weeks.
Yep.
So I have to be curious why you would have a ski mask when it's been averaging 90 degrees for the last couple weeks. So that raises questions.
Yeah, it does.
As to what he was doing. So, did they, was there a possible crime that he had committed, right? That they, the car looks like description of, I don't know. I haven't seen any of that, though, because the police haven't said anything yet.
Right. I will say one thing about the excessiveness, and that is that if you're responding to a high-speed chase and you're joining with your brother in blue, however you want to say it, the fact that 8 cops respond. I've seen multiple cop cars dealing with a routine traffic stop, and I think it's standard practice that if you see an officer pull over, you're a police officer, you pull up and make sure everything's okay. In this case, they were joining obviously a very tense situation, and the fact that 8 of them were there, I don't think is necessarily indicative of excessive.
Yeah, and so when I watched the video too, I think more cops got involved once he fired the shot.
Right, which makes sense, though, right?
Yeah. So I mean, once he you can see the officer's video where you can hear the shot, and then he's like, all right, and the cop actually handles it pretty good. He's just like, all right, shots fired, and he does the whole thing on the radio. It's
hard to justify 60 bullet wounds. That's completely hard to.
Right. I mean, but then the question is,
and some of those could be exits, it could be
right.
Fewer, but
I mean, because when you watch the video, it's hard to count, because what I tried to do was, how many shots did the officer whose dash cam or whose body cam I'm watching from, how many did he shoot? Right, because they all shot around the same. It sounds like so. And it's hard to say if it was 60 or 90 shots. It's a lot of shots. But the thing that I think there is a multiplier there, because if you've got one guy that lets off, right, and that lets off 6 or 7 or 8 or however many shots, then and you've got 8 of them doing that. Like, there's going to be a lot. It adds up quickly, right? And if they're all trained the same way, right, then that's what you get. Now, I'm not necessarily. I guess I am justifying it to a degree, and I know it's fucked up. And the problem is that how bad this looks, because everyone wants to go to the he's unarmed, and everyone's saying he's unarmed, but I can't ignore the fact that you're in a car, you're driving, you shot at the police, it's relatively clear, and then you get out and you run. I don't know that you left the gun behind.
Right, of course.
I have no idea that you left the gun behind. I know you have one. I don't know that you left it behind. You're running in the dark, and then you turn at me. I'm probably going to shoot you too. Yeah. And it's terrible. It's tragic. I feel for his family. But I'm not going to put this in the camp of some of those other cases that we've talked about that have been clear as day, blatant.
Right. It's not Derek Chauvin. It's not Laquan McDonald getting shot.
It's not. Right. I mean, there's way too many cases. It's not. It's not Taylor, Breonna Taylor in her situation in Louisville. It's not any of those. This is one where you can question how many shots the police fired. Okay. This is on Jayland Walker. I don't know what he was going through. I don't know what he was doing. I don't know why he did it. But everything he did was wrong, and it got him killed. It got him killed. And you can say that the police need to be better. I don't know what you want them to do different, because I got to be honest. Look, you got a guy who shoots at me and then turns at me in the dark. I am shooting back. Sorry, I'm going to. And most cops will. And if it means 10 rounds, you can go to the cops who have taken in guys who didn't, but the reality is chances are those guys surrendered. Those guys shot, they put their guns down, they put their hands up, and they put their, they went to their knees and they surrendered. So now the cop, you know what I mean?
The shooter in Buffalo being an example of that.
Right. It's just like, why did you take him in? Like, listen, he put his gun down, he goes down on his knees, I can't execute him in the middle of the street. I'm like, well, you executed this guy. It's like, well, I executed him because he didn't do he didn't do that. If he does that, then I can't kill him. If he doesn't do that, then I can. They may not like that, which is fine. Don't like it. This is not any. There's nothing likable. There's nothing likable about any of this, but that's fucking reality, right? And there's no training away from that, right? But the only way to go to that is to take the guns away from the police, which some people really think is a good idea, right? And that shit may work in the UK, but that shit ain't gonna work here. So I mean, I don't have a good answer for you on this, other than we need to teach these kids, these young men, to value their lives more and to make better decisions. And you can go to life is hard and there's so many unfair things. That's fine. But for everyone who does something like this, there are thousands who actually don't every day. For everyone who breaks, for every young man or woman that breaks and does something that costs them their life, you can blame all these factors. But the reality is that there are people around them who deal with those same factors that we are trying to help, that we're trying to reach every day, who reach back. Right? Who try. And I'm not going to sacrifice everything because this one couldn't handle it and broke and snapped and made multiple decisions that cost him his life. Right? Like, we have to continue to tell people that you have to have certain personal accountability. And then on the other side, we're still going to fight to change police to make them better. Right? But you got to help us help you by not putting yourself in a situation that gets you killed. Right? I mean, that's just...
I can't really add to that. All right, man, we're going to do a quick Brittney Griner update. So we now know that the charge was based on possessing 4 cartridges, which I won't say that I've never had 4 cartridges in my house at any given time. Don't. But they're saying that the likelihood of her getting a fair trial is slim to none. And the State Department is saying that there have been attempts to do a prisoner exchange like they did with that Marine a while ago. And did you hear who they were trying to get exchanged?
Yes.
An arms dealer.
Yes.
A fucking arms dealer.
And that's, Jim, what did I tell you from the beginning? Right? Like, this was not, like, this, yeah, right. I mean, like, so Russia's like, give us back this arms dealer and we'll give you back this WNBA player who had 4 cartridges a week. Totally fair. Right. Right. And what is happening right now? I read it, like, what is happening in that Time magazine article that I sent you. What were the comments? She's not getting support from the U.S. government because she's black and she's gay, and the government doesn't care. Now, I don't think that's a fair estimation of or a fair analysis of what we're doing from a government standpoint. I think the federal government is doing what they can. The problem,
which is not much.
There's not much that they can do. Like, they're not they're not going to send in SEAL Team 6 to get her out. They're not going to. Correct. Right. And so
and they can't.
They're right. Like, they can't and they can't. And so that's the only way that you can get her out.
I've got an answer. Frame Alex Ovechkin, Russian star hockey player.
No, I know exactly who he is.
And say you can have Alex.
You know what?
I'm mostly joking.
I know that you're joking, but that may literally be. You know what? Actually, it's not Ovechkin.
Who is it?
Steven Seagal.
Oh, I like this now.
Let's frame Steven Seagal. Let's throw him in the pokey.
Although
they'll say, why do we give a fuck? He's not Russian.
Dude's fucking crazy.
This dude just comes over here and hangs out and just eats food and sucks Vladimir's dick. Why do we care? Hey, keep him. So never mind.
Anyway.
You're probably better off with Ovechkin. But, I mean, all this is, like, listen, this is terrible. I want Brittney Griner back. Like, I haven't always agreed with some of her things that she said publicly, but I want this for no one. I don't want this for her. I don't know what the answer is to get her back, because what they're talking about is a prisoner swap. Like, we're going to give the Russians back an arms dealer, right?
Right.
While they're in the middle of a war, attacking a sovereign country that literally did nothing to them but annihilated or annoyed them. Jim, I don't know. And I mean, they're talking about 10 years in prison, and she's probably going to get found. She's going to be found guilty. They're probably going to max out her sentence. And then the question is, can she survive? Can she make it? And I think I don't know. I can't, 10 years in a Russian prison?
She's been there since April, right? So it's been 4 months. I don't think I've survived 4 months in a Russian prison. And I'm not a gay woman.
Right. I mean, and I don't even know if that doesn't matter as much. I don't mean that I'm...
she's more likely to be a target of the system and of the culture,
right? Because they're not
Progressive.
They're not progressive at all. They're not supportive of LGBTQ in Russia, and they don't like black people. So I mean, she is not checking any of the boxes that work out in her favor here. This is another one that breaks the heart.
Yeah.
And people say, well, people could take my argument with Jayland Walker and say, well, had Brittney not, look, I'm not convinced that Brittney had the cartridges with her to begin with. I know everyone's saying, oh, well, she's a black NBA player. Of course she had weed, and everybody's got weed. Look, this is Russia, right? And she spent a lot of time there. I don't know if she takes the risk, and maybe she did. I'm not saying she didn't. Maybe she did. Maybe she maybe she has done it enough to where she got comfortable, thought it wasn't going to be a big deal. Maybe she's not paying attention to the political landscape. She's just trying to go there and make money, which is a whole other thing that gets me in trouble with the progressive crowd, because they're like, she should make what LeBron James makes or whatever. And I'm like, no one goes to see those games.
Yeah.
Right? If anyone making that argument to me that WNBA players should make the same money that NBA players have made, you need to show me a ticket stub of a WNBA game, or you need to show me the receipt of your season tickets to a WNBA franchise, right? Because
but even that's not enough for me, because
but the reality is that chances are whoever is making that argument has never been to a WNBA game,
correct?
Right, which is most people, because people don't go. Right, now, if you want to argue why people don't go, that's a different thing. But just based off of basic market. Math. Right? That's why they don't. The only reason the WNBA exists is because the NBA allows it to exist. Right? If the WNBA were to separate from the NBA, right, and have to stand on their own without money from the NBA, they would collapse and fail immediately. Right, the next day. Right, the NBA literally exists because Adam Silver and David Stern said, and then Adam Silver took it over as a commissioner and said, we're going to make sure that this is a thing and this is an option for women. Sure. And we want to grow the sport so that eventually, maybe one day, it can stand on its own, but it can't right now. Right, and so could the NBA play the WNBA players more? Now that's the conversation we could have. They could probably pay them more, but they're not going to make the same money that the guys in the NBA are. Right.
All right. All this comes down to TV contracts. I don't know what the WNBA's TV contract is, but I agree with you. It probably wouldn't exist without the NBA.
It would not. And they have one with ESPN.
Okay.
Right? Because you can watch WNBA games on the. But listen, the whole point is, I don't know if Brittney Griner took the cartridges to Russia, or if they were planted, if they, because I haven't fucking seen them, right? All you see, there was a video where there's a lot of security around her at the airport, and there's a dog, right, and they're saying that's how they found out that it was the dogs, and it's just look, man, if you trust Russians that they just happened to stumble upon her, and she just happened. Like, come on.
Okay, I don't believe that. I believe it's thoroughly possible she had a couple carts with her because she's on the road, and I would do the same thing. And truthfully, I would probably put
in Russia.
I probably would act differently in Russia, and I probably would say, you know what, these things are worth $40 a piece in the U.S. I'll wait till I get home.
I just traveled internationally to a Muslim country,
right?
And I was like, nah, I'm not. Nope.
Good.
Not a chance in hell.
Good.
Well, maybe I had edible on the plane over. Maybe.
But that's tough.
That's a different conversation.
Yeah, that's entirely different.
But no, I'm not. There was right. I mean, like now. Listen, I'm not Brittney Griner, right? Like, so
sure.
Again, she has made this trip multiple times, so maybe she had a certain level of comfortability. I find that a little bit hard to believe, but okay, fine, whatever. Anything's on the table. But the reality is that she, we've had people who have done a lot worse. That we've been able to get back, but the issue is that it's going to be a while. Like, I don't think we see her.
Such a political pawn.
She's going to be there for years, no matter what. I think she's going to get found guilty, no matter what. Does she serve all 10 years? That I don't know, but I don't think we get her back anytime soon.
Arrest Ovechkin. All right, we are at Whiskey Congress.
I'm not opposed to it, and I think I don't think that's as bad as idea as you're playing. Like I can make an argument for it.
I'm partial. It's a half joke.
I'll plant something on them.
Okay, we are at Whiskey Congress on Instagram and Twitter. Thanks for listening. We're done.